Thank you for joining us. A very big welcome to wherever you are in the world. This is the fourth of our 6 webinars live from COP27. So we've got passionate speakers, real views, and latest updates. Today is our focus on nature and sustainable solutions and soil. So our top speaker today is Seth Itzkan, who's the co-founder of Soil for Climate. So Seth, would you like to just give us a quick intro to who you are?
Sure. First of all, Charles, thank you so much for inviting me to this session. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here today. I'm reporting to you live from the COP27 conference from the Blue Zone in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. And I am the co-founder of Soil for Climate. We advocate for soil as a climate solution. I'm excited about this particular COP because there's a food pavilion here for the first time ever at a UN climate conference of this type. Can you confirm if you're hearing me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you okay. The nearer you hold the microphone to yourself, I think the better, Seth, but we can hear you.
Okay.
That's good.
Okay. Good.
So do you want to
I'll hold it like this.
All,
so what I want to show you, I'm going to use the camera to. Yeah. So I'm in the blue zone of COP27. That's the UN climate conference. It's in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt right now. And the blue zone is like the official delegate zone. There's also sort of a public zone called the green zone. So what I'm excited about, this is what I want to share with you right now, is I'm at the Food Systems Pavilion. And this is the first time there has ever been a Food Systems Pavilion at a COP, you know, at a UN climate conference COP. COP just stands for Conference of Parties, by the way. But the fact that there's a food systems pavilion now is a major breakthrough. And you would think it should have been here a long time ago. It's sort of long overdue. But at any rate, it's here now. So I want to show it to you. So I'm going to step back for a little bit so you can see it. So I'm trying to show you this. So this whole area here in green is called the pavilion. And, you know, it's a conference space within a much larger conference space, obviously, but it's specifically on food and food systems in the climate context. And this is the first time this has ever happened. You might think, my God, I can't believe they've never had a food system pavilion before. But the truth is they haven't. They've never had a food systems pavilion before at the UN climate conference. And now they do. So this is a big deal, and I'm very excited about it. And many of my colleagues are here.
Okay, that's amazing. Thank you so much. So do you want to, I mean, a lot of people are aware of reforestation. They're aware of the impact of nature solutions. Do you want to tell us, first of all, a little bit about actually what is the problem with soil? So what's happening with soil? What's the problem that needs to be solved here?
Right. Well, here's the, the elevator pitch. Is that soil is the largest reservoir of carbon on the earth, other than, of course, fossil fuels. Okay. But in terms of the reservoirs other than fossil fuels, they're soil, biomass, and the atmosphere itself. There's also, of course, the ocean. There's dissolved carbon in the ocean in various forms. But in terms of the forms we can work with, I mean, when you think about the carbon drawdown techniques, you're sometimes hearing these, sort of absurd technological things of trying to capture so much. I mean, it's ridiculous. The proper way, of course, is through improvement of biomass. And in that regard, most people think trees, well, reforestation. Well, of course, yes, trees are an important solution. But soil is actually a much larger potential solution. Maybe 3 times as much carbon can be stored in soils than in trees. So obviously, we should be doing reforestation anyway for a wide variety of reasons. And carbon is not even necessarily the most important reason. I mean, there are numerous cooling effects and water cycle effects that impact the climate anyway. And even if they weren't sequestering carbon, they're still helpful in cooling the climate. And the same is true for soil as well. Restoring soil has numerous benefits on the climate, even if it weren't sequestering carbon, like improving the water cycle, creating localized cooling that way. But in terms of carbon, when you're literally counting carbon molecules by the ton or the billions of tons, it turns out that soil is a huge reservoir, and billions of tons of carbon can be stored in soil through improved grazing and cropping management.
Okay, well, look, what I'm hearing from you, Seth, is that soil has got 3 times the potential of removing carbon than have trees. So that's great news. I think people are very much aware of the impact of industrial farming across the world. They're aware of a problem. So do you want to start telling us a little bit about what your plan is? So what's your plan as to how you're planning to improve soil? What's this all about?
Well, you know, first of all, I want to take the emphasis away from me for a second and just say that there is a robust community of organizations that are working on improving soil for a wide variety of reasons. And they were doing this, you know, even before climate became an issue. But so I don't want to make it sound like it's just me. But now that climate is an issue, it's showing up at a climate conference, for example. Let me show you one of the sort of the good news stories that's being part of this conference. This is something called the Coalition of Action for Soil Health. I'm going to just sort of hold the camera so you can see it a little bit. So there's 2 logos there. One is the Coalition of Action for Soil Health, and the other says 4 per 1,000. And it's called the Resolution for Soil Health. And then you see the COP27 logo. My organization, Soil for Climate, is a partner with both those other organizations. You know, there's overlap, and that's fine. And we're all colleagues with each other, and we all, you know, scratch each other's back. And so they're having a presence here, and that's really good news. In terms of the soil management, you know, there's 2 sort of paradigms. I mean, well, maybe paradigm isn't the right word, but anyway, the first thing to do is literally just to stop killing it. You know, it's the same thing with forest management. Well, first you need to stop killing them, right? You know, it would be helpful if you stop cutting down trees as a starter. Well, with soil, the equivalent of cutting down a tree is tillage. Tillage to soil is the same as logging is to forests. You can sort of think of it like that. I actually just thought of that just now as an analogy. When you see the plows with the tills turning over the soil, you can visualize that that's a forest being cut down. There's a million little roots that are being torn up, and so no-till is sort of like the #1 methodology. This is in terms of the farming. Now, okay. That just stops.
So Seth, let's just understand. Seth, let's just understand here. Okay, so we've been plowing the fields for hundreds of years, okay, and
thousands,
okay, thousands of years.
thousands,
Okay,
thousands of
so
years.
we used to seeing
Yeah, yeah.
plowed fields, and we used to seeing all the stuff being turned over and got rid of and whatever. So, but how can you plant something like wheat and whatever? How can you plant wheat and some of these crops over the top of what there already is? I mean, this is a little bit of a mystery. What happens? How do you achieve this? How do you stop all the weeds and all those sort of things growing and getting in the way?
Well, there are better approaches. I don't present myself as a farming consultant, but there are certainly much better approaches than the old industrial model. But I'm going to actually use that as a segue to get into my focus, which is about grazing and regenerative grazing. And part of me wants to say, well, growing wheat is a problem. Just regardless of how you do it, it's a problem. Most of the best soil in the world is turned into wheat or corn or cotton or some type of annual crop, which is fundamentally harmful to the soil in terms of its production. And it used to be, and should be again, a biodiverse prairie maintained with grazing. I mean, all of the middle of the United States and, Iowa, Kansas, Illinois, Nebraska, most of the Southwest of the United States, which is now desert. It didn't used to be desert. That used to be healthy grassland. There were tens of millions of large ruminants and predators moving across the terrain and actually keeping it healthy. Now, people talk about buffalo. It wasn't just buffalo. There was a wide range of large mammals. And it's that way all over the world. Just about everywhere in the world where you're growing wheat. I mean, people are talking about the Ukraine now. It's the breadbasket. Well, should it be the breadbasket? Should we be even eating bread at all? So I have sort of a, maybe a radical position on this, but I say that annual grains are fundamentally part of the problem. And a good deal of the world that's in any kind of annual grain is probably being grown on what used to be a soil carbon-rich, biodiverse prairie/savanna with large ruminants moving across it. And there are new types of grazing techniques that replicate that type of herd behavior that is healthy for the soil. You've probably heard the term holistic plan grazing, regenerative grazing, AMP grazing, various terms going around. But what we're doing is we're moving domestic animals in a way that replicates the beneficial behavior of the wild animals. And that restores the soil. Now the question is, can you be doing that, with your annual grains? And yes, I'm sure that's possible, but it's going to take coordination and monitoring of soil health and being cognizant to the soil health. So that's a challenge. The argument, well, a good deal of annual grains is grown for livestock. Well, that's true too. That's also a problem, but it actually isn't the livestock that's the problem. It's the concentrated animal feeding operation that's the problem. That's a problem, and that's a problem for multiple reasons. One, it's unethical, but two, it also depends on the annual grains. But the animals themselves aren't the problem. Those animals could be in pasture and they could be moving in a way that restores soil. And that's sort of my advocacy, if you will, where I push back against the anti-animal ag movements. And because that movement is still heavily reliant on annual grains, which are still going to be deleterious. I mean, Pat Brown, the CEO of Impossible Foods, has even said we're going to continue to rely on GMO soy. I mean, from my point of view, that's horrifying. I don't want to be eating a product that's GMO soy growing in Iowa on what should be biodiverse pasture maintained with grazing. So, you know, these are the challenges in terms of diet and food. These are the challenges. You can't just say one thing is good or the other thing is bad. The issue is the production model and whether or not the food is being produced in a way that's actually improving soil. Imagine going to a supermarket and there were two parts of the supermarket. One part where the food was actually maybe carbon negative. It was actually produced in a way that made soil better. And the other was food that was, you know, carbon positive or, you know, climate negative.
Yeah, yeah.
You could have meat or vegetables and on either side of that aisle. So just because you're quote unquote plant-based doesn't mean you're doing the planet a favor. Not if you're walking past a pasture-raised beef that was produced by a smallholder producer that was restoring soil. And part of my advocacy is to champion those people, to highlight their products, which are only now showing up in the supermarkets.
Okay.
But for example, Will Harris's, yeah. Yeah.
So let me ask you this question. We got a question come in the chat here. Can we still feed the world's population with regenerative farming, mixed farming, with the 8 billion people that we have today?
Well, I mean, that's really sort of the question of the hour, isn't it? And depending on what you believe about that will justify, you know, your approach. So, well, let me be honest, I don't know, okay? However, I believe that our production ability using regenerative methods is certainly much greater than is commonly believed. And on the cattle side, people say, well, there's not enough land to do the kind of pasture grazing that you're talking about. I push back against that as well because so much land is out of production and is degraded. I mean, most of the US Southwest is not in production at all. And people have just given up on it. Well, that actually could be a healthy grassland, growing sheep, or, you know, supporting a sheep and cattle production if it's being done the right way.
Okay.
And so when people say there's not enough land, they're not considering all that land.
So Seth, when you say US Southwest, what states do you mean here? Because a lot of people don't understand this.
Well, West Texas, Nevada, Arizona, you know, going into the northern Mexico.
Okay, so but some of these places are very dry and desert. So I mean, is it possible to bring these back?
Yeah. Exactly. You see, that's even the word desert itself is a little controversial and confusing. When did they become desert? They weren't. It wasn't a desert 300 years ago. Those were healthy grasslands. There's pictures of you know, extension service people from the 1930s in New Mexico standing next to a patch of some remains of the soil. There's like 8 feet of erosion. You realize the buffalo used to go through there. There were wolves. There was plenty of standing water. We call it a desert now. It didn't used to be a desert. Same thing with lots of Africa. Almost all of South Africa now is a quote unquote desert. They talk about the Karoo Desert. It wasn't the Karoo Desert 100 years ago. It was the Karoo grassland, or the Karoo Veld was the sort of the Afrikaans, you know, Dutch term for it. When did it become a desert? So you see, we've been creating deserts That's part of the story of humanity, is we create deserts. And when you cut down a forest and you turn it into a desert or bare ground, it intellectually makes sense. But what happens is what we do is we kill the megafauna. We kill off the big animals like the buffalo in the United States. And then about 30 years later, we get the dust bowls. There didn't used to be dust bowls. So we created the desert by killing the buffalo. And this has been the story all over the world. And so a lot of these areas that are quote unquote desert really shouldn't be desert. There's really very, very few parts in the world that get like less than 1 inch of rain a year, 1 or 2. Anything that's getting more than that should be sustaining some type of grassland. And it may not be, you know, big megafauna, but something like sheep or a smaller grazing animal should be able to be sustained on that if they're moved properly.
Okay. So Seth, tell us a bit about the negotiating stream. So you're at the COP27. There's discussions going on about all this stuff. So what's happening in the formal negotiation streams? Talking about the subjects of agriculture, stopping desertification, increasing water. What's happening here about these key subjects that you've raised?
Well, so I'm very happy you mentioned that, because this soil health resolution is, it's a policy statement. Again, let me show this to you. Let me give your friends the URL. It's Coalition of Action for Soil Health. Just Google Coalition of Action for Soil Health. The URL will come up, and then click the link that says resolution.
Great.
And you'll come to this document. You'll be able to download this document. And I'm very happy to say that I was a co-author of this document. My name's not listed, but I contributed quite a bit to it. And this document here is actually just a one-page overview of the resolution itself. This isn't the resolution. This is sort of an overview about why we need the resolution. The resolution is a separate document, which you can also download, and that's just text. It's just written sort of as a policy piece. This is obviously, this one is just sort of an informational piece, but the resolution itself is a policy document. And it is asking for nations to make a commitment to soil health, and to include a commitment to soil health in their NDC. So NDC in climate talk stands for nationally determined contributions. So anyone who's working in the climate policy space is familiar with that term, a nationally determined contribution. And typically what that has always meant is like, oh, we'll reduce coal use by so much, or we'll increase wind or solar by so many kilowatt hours. That's been the typical example of what's in an NDC. But now what they're trying to get nations to do is to say something like, we're going to bring so many acres or hectares into regenerative agriculture, or we're going to reduce erosion by so much, or we're going to be sequestering so much carbon or CO2 equivalent in soil or through regenerative agriculture and grazing by such and such a year. And we don't tell anyone what their target should be. We just simply are asking that they even include soil at all in their targets, in their NDCs. So that's what's sort of new to report in the policy space. And the fact that it's here now in the blue zone, in the climate conference, makes it more quote unquote real. Like this is a real topic now that
absolutely
delegates can't ignore. Yeah.
So Seth, let's just ask
now,
you.
Now what's interesting here,
we need to round off soon, but something I think a lot of people on will be aware of is that the UN announcement in 2014 saying that the world maybe only had 60 harvests left because of issues to do with soil quality and all of this. So more recently, articles have said that no, this isn't the case. So what's your take on this? Where is the world with these 60 harvests?
Excuse me. Well, Charles, I mean, I honestly don't want to weigh in on that because I don't know how helpful that is. I mean, what difference does it make if it's 40 or 60 or 100? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like those debates seem like a distraction. Whatever it is, we know we have to stop erosion and we have to stop desertification. Now, the current statistics that are in the resolution, and other people may say that the statistics are wrong or whatever, but the current statistics from peer-reviewed literature are that we're losing about 24 billion tons of topsoil every year. 24 billion tons. I don't know, that seems like a lot to me. And on the upside, the drawdown potential or the mitigation potential, if we do things right, is in the scale of about 2 to 6 billion tons of CO2 equivalent per year by 2030. I actually think that's low. I actually think we could be doing much better than that. But again, what's the point? I mean, we don't need to argue about it. We just need to start doing it. We just have to start immediately doing better agriculture and better grazing.
Yeah, sorry, Seth, can you just repeat the figure? The line broke up. So by 2030, we could be removing how much CO2 per year? Okay. The peer-reviewed literature that's cited in the resolution, and personally, I think it can be much more than that. But nonetheless, this is a conservative estimate, is 1.8 to 5.5 gigatons, or billions of tons, of CO2 equivalent, so CO2e, which is a term now, by 2030. So look, we're already at the end of 2022, right? 2023 is right around the corner. So we're talking 7 years from now. And they say that's almost exactly the same as the wind potential. Everybody talks about wind and solar. They're trying to make the point that soil is as big as wind and solar by 2030. Okay, now what I'm saying is I think that estimate is very low. I think it could actually be much more than that. And that's only by 2030. You know, it needs to just keep going up and up. I think, well, I don't want to throw numbers out, but I think the potential is actually much higher. But it will require the regenerative grazing like I'm talking about. Yeah. Well, I think, Seth, this has really been an amazing discussion because you've put on the table the issue of desertification. You've given the examples of the southwestern US. We've talked about the issue of water, and you've given a very good perspective on this UN 60 years, which is that the world is losing an incredible amount of topsoil and the incredible potential for the soil to absorb more CO2. So thank you very much for that. So just in terms of rounding off, so what are your hopes really for COP27? I mean, we're getting very mixed messages, I think, about what's happening. We're getting some smaller things which are looking quite good, but maybe some of the bigger things are not looking so good. So what's your hope really for what can be achieved in the next few days before everybody decamps home?
Well, let me just turn the camera for a minute just so you can see the view from where I am right now. This is just one corridor. There are dozens of corridors like this, literally dozens. And I'm only in one building. There are several buildings like this. I mean, this is a massive event. There's thousands of people here. There's hundreds of events going on, every imaginable topic. I really can't speak to the whole big picture. You know, I need to just stay focused in my area, which is soil as a climate solution, and specifically regenerative grazing as a soil solution. You know, I need to just focus on that and let other people comment on whether or not COP was a success or not. From my point of view, this is a success because this food pavilion is here. I'm standing in it. This was not in Glasgow last year. In fact, there was no mention of food systems in the food system in Glasgow last year. You know, so this is a step forward. It's still, you know, tiny compared to everything else, but it's here. And I just want to be thankful for that.
Okay. Okay, so thanks very much for that. That's a really good comment because I know that a lot of people have said that agriculture contributes a huge amount of CO2. It's something that the ag industry has been sweeping under the carpet. And thank you very much for being there for us and putting this on the table. And we'll definitely be reading your papers on the Coalition for Soil Health. Thank you for that. So best wishes to you. Have a really successful rest of the conference. And thank you again for speaking with us and our audience today. Thank you so much, Seth. Thank you.
Charles, thank you. Before we end, just also in addition to looking at the Coalition of Action for Soil Health, also check out Soil for Climate, you know, my particular organization, and check us out on YouTube. We've had lots of great videos. Our Facebook group has 33,000 members, and you know, we'd love to have you guys be more aware of what we're doing too. And we make great hats. This hat is made from organic cotton and hemp. This isn't something you just order from Staples or Amazon. This was a special procurement.
Brilliant. Okay. Thank you, Seth. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, bye-bye.